Hello.
Something a little bit. What's it saying? Wait. Huh? Usually you want to say something.
Okay, I think we have 1 o'clock. I want to thank everybody for joining. I know some people are still trying to join, and we can do that throughout the meeting, but want to go ahead and get started just so we stay on some sort of a timeline here. First and foremost, I wanted to thank all of our sponsors for the meeting. You should be able to see a list of our sponsors here of Colquitt County Extension. I know this is a strange year, strange time, different way of doing production meetings. Would much prefer have our normal in-person meetings. It sure would have helped me to meet folks and introduce myself and get started in this role. But this is the kind of the hand that we were dealt, and hopefully we have better times to come, and we'll have in-person meetings in the future. If you do want pesticide credits, the instructions, should be able to see the instructions here. First thing you need to do in the chat box is just type in a comment with your name, the county that you're from, and your pesticide license number. And if you're asking for CCA credits, that needs to be specified in the chat box, so we'll know how to file the credits. And the same thing will need to be done at the end of the meeting. You'll have to basically sign out in the same way that you signed in by entering your name, county, pesticide license number, and again, specify what type of credits you're requesting so we can get those to you. And we have 4 speakers on the agenda today, Dr. Stormy Sparks, Dr. Babesh Dutta, Dr. Andre Da Silva, and Dr. Abby. But we're going to go ahead and let Dr. Stormy start with his presentation. And I'll do my best to share or let him share the screen.
All right, are you seeing the title slide?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, we're going to go through this pretty quick. Be glad to answer questions as we go through if you have any, or we can try to address them at the end. But I'm going to cover a fair amount in a short amount of time. Something I frequently overlook and shouldn't, but I do want to thank all the people that support us at the University of Georgia. You know, greatly appreciate them paying my salary and give me an office to sit in. But pretty much everything else we do is through grants, outside funding. So we need to recognize those people, particularly the Commodity Commission for Vegetables has done a lot in the last, 6-7 years. Industry partners, we couldn't do what we do without those industry partners. We do a lot of work for them, but their funding also supports a lot of the work we do. And then for specific projects where we have specific issues, there's actual federal funding that comes through, but that is strictly through grower support. If we didn't have that grower support, we wouldn't be able to do that work either. Registration changes, probably the big one that you need to be aware of or thinking about anyway is Lord's Band. I think everybody knows Corteva ceased production, but Lord's Band's still out there. There are generics out there. There's 3 of them at least. There's other sources of Lord's Band, of the chlorpyrifos, other than Corteva. So those are still out there. They're still registered. But Lord's Band is continuing to go through re-registration at EPA. And with this change of administration, there's a good chance that the attitude towards Lord's Band may change, and then it's still in the courts. Everybody you talk to about Lord's Band, basically they'll tell you, yeah, it's going to be around for a year or 2, but it may not be around much longer than that. So if you've got any critical uses where you use it, be looking at what your alternatives are and figuring out what you're going to do in the future. It would be my suggestion. Pepper weevil, get a lot of questions about them right now. Even we've been monitoring them we were on our 3rd year of wide scale monitoring, 4th year of really monitoring overwintering populations. Last year, we monitored in Grady County, Brooks County, Eccles County, Colquitt County, and Tift County. And you can see we had some pretty high numbers in there. That's number of weevils per trap per week, 4 per field. So, you know, when you're at 200, that's a lot of weevils, particularly when really our target is 0, is what we're hoping to reach. And that's what, if you look at that and look at that same data and just look at that 0 line, you see that there are very, very few fields where we're monitoring where we reach 0, and most of those don't stay at 0 even if they hit 0. So bottom line, if you average it over all the traps we run, we're carrying a lot of weevils into the winter. They drop off in the spring as it warms up. If they don't have food available, they don't live very long. If they have food available, they can live a long time, but without food, they don't live very long when it's warm. So the numbers drop off in the spring as we go into planting season, but they're not zeroing out. So we are obviously overwintering weevils. This is not something we're bringing up from Florida. We have an annual issue with weevils, more so than we've had in the past. As far as weevil insecticides, Vidate is probably still our best product. This is the bioassay that Dr. Riley ran last year. Vidate probably gave us our best efficacy. Ectara and Assail are pretty good products as well. Those are the ones that we really rely on, those 3 probably as far as overall efficacy. Belay showed good efficacy, but unfortunately Belay is no longer registered on peppers. We'd lost that registration through negotiations on honeybee safety and maintaining other uses for belay. So those are our primary products for pepper weevil. The Excel and Torac, based on information primarily out of Florida, are providing some efficacy. They're good in rotations. They don't necessarily look good in a bioassay, as you see here, but those are the primary products we use. Dibrome in this bioassay didn't look horrible. It wasn't great. It looked, as far as direct mortality, better than Excel and Torac. My concern with Dibrome is probably okay as a rotation partner in there, but you might need to shorten up the interval because Dibrome has very, very short residual activity. Just remind everyone that for in-season pepper weevil management, it is preventative control. You don't want to get behind pepper weevil because the only stage you can control is the adults. Once the egg's laid, it's going to hatch inside the pod. The grub are going to develop inside the pod. It pupates inside the pod, and then emerges as an adult again. So the only time you can attack them as an adult. They do require fruiting forms for reproduction. So when you first transplant, if you're putting out small plants and there's no flower buds or anything out there, you can wait until you start getting those flower buds to spray. So they can feed on the foliage. They feed on foliage readily. It's a food source that helps them survive, but they do not reproduce until you've got that fruiting form out there. So you can wait until you got a fruiting form, then go in with 1 or 2 automatic applications if you've got weevils present, to try to make sure you're starting clean. And then if you're using preventative sprays for in-season management, if you're not spending a lot of time sampling to determine whether or not you got weevils, and you're doing preventative sprays, it is a maximum 5-day spray interval. A 7-day spray interval will not work if you have pepper weevils in the field. All right, so it's a maximum 5-day, and if you get moderate to heavy pressure, you might need to tighten it up from there. The big thing I always emphasize when you finish with the crop, spring, summer, whatever, fall, destroy that crop. Try to destroy the pods. Try to prevent regrowth. Again, like right now, where we have fields that don't have regrowth, the populations will come down relatively rapidly. They can live a long time in the winter anyway, but if you've got regrowth out there and foliage, that's a food source for them. If you've got pods on the ground that haven't deteriorated, such as jalapeno pods, that's a food source and they'll live a lot longer. The other question I get is, should we be spraying right now? If you look at what typically happens, and we're getting very high captures, this is last year's, but we're getting high capture in traps right now too. There's a lot of weevils out there right now, but if you look as you go into the spring, most of those are going to die anyway. And a lot of those weevils probably are not in those fields. They may be in the woods or whatnot around there. So spraying right now might make you feel better, but I don't know that it's going to help you a whole lot. I would wait until I come into the spring, put those transplants out there, let that be an attraction for the weevils in the area into the field, and then hit it 1 or 2 times when you see that first fruiting structure. Don't let them get established in those fields, but let that field kind of act like a trap. Diamondback moth, we continue to do bioassays when we have populations to work with. That's where most of our work has been with diamondback moth recently, but we do still do some field trials at looking at some other approaches. One of the things I did this fall with the bioassays, because it just jumps out at you, is looking at not only mortality, which is our most important indicator, but also notice there's very obvious reductions in feeding with some treatments, even where we're not getting great mortality. You can see in this picture, the middle one is the check. This is 3 days after they've been put on there, and you can see particularly Proclaim and Radiant give us good mortality, low feeding. Avant and Torac, particularly Torac in this case, give us not as high a mortality as you're seeing with the Proclaim and Radiant, but obvious protection of the crop, more so than our mortality data would suggest. So that's why I've got that picture in there. Those 4 products this last fall showed good reductions in feeding. So actually protection of the plant As far as mortality is concerned, you see these 4 tests were in Berrien, Emmanuel, Tift, and Colquitt County, where we collected larvae. Proclaim and Radiant gave us our highest mortality, but that's only about 60%. Again, Avant and Torac, probably more in the 30–40%, but very obvious reduction in feeding. Possibly you would get mortality after that 72 hours. Of concern is the low mortality with XRL and Harvanta in all 4 of these. The Corrigan has not worked well on diamondback moth for about 3 years now. So we already knew we had some group 28 resistance. It appears that the fact that XRL and Harvanta, they normally, you'll have, one field where they don't work well, but 2 or 3 where they do. We may have reached the level of resistance to the group 28 where those products aren't really giving us much efficacy now. That's something we'll have to continue to monitor, but that's something to be aware of. Some other products I've been working with the last year and a half that I've had questions about is the spear lep and diatomaceous earth. Here you can see the spear lep is a product that you put out in combination with a BT. In this case, it's Zentari. I've done bioassays with it. I'll show you some field data as well. Here you can see that compared to the Zentari, it really didn't add much. And that's what I've seen in most cases. Now we're still trying to figure out how to use this product. I started out, such as in this case, using a full rate of spear lep with a full rate of Zentari. They say the BT's in there to disrupt the gut lining. The molecule in the spear lep is large. It can't easily penetrate the gut and get into the hemocoel. The BT helps that happen so that you can get mortality. But what they're also saying is if you put too high of a rate of the BT, it prevents feeding so they don't get a large of enough dose of the spear lep. So we're playing with the rates of both products to see if we can improve efficacy of this product, but right now I'm not seeing it. Bioassays with diatomaceous earth, this is at 5 pounds per acre and 10 pounds per acre, get very little mortality, direct mortality with the product. I've also done it in combination with insecticides and bioassays, and I'm not getting a lot of efficacy with those treatments as well. Did a number of field studies with it, but I only had one where I had good populations and good conditions. This particular test last spring, we had good populations, very little rain during the treatment period, which is a problem with the diatomaceous earth. If it rains, you need to reapply it. But here you can see we put out the Sea Light. This was at 10 pounds per acre twice a week. It really did not provide any more protection of the crop as compared to the check. This had both imported cabbage worm and diamondback moth in it. And then where you look at the spear lep, Zentari, the good news is the Zentari worked very well. The BTs worked much better last year than they did the year before when I was concerned about some resistance issues, but they appeared to be working fairly well. And adding the spear lep, there wasn't a lot of room for improvement, but it didn't give us any obvious improvement in this test in the field either. So those are 2 products we're still working with. I haven't given up on them, but I haven't been able to make them work in my test either. Want to touch on whiteflies. In fact, quite a bit on whiteflies. First of all, I want to point out last fall was bad, but it was nowhere near as bad as I was anticipating. Thankfully, we had some very large populations in late summer. We actually had some populations in spring that were as high as any I've ever seen in this area in spring, in some individual hot spots, individual fields. Viruses were detected early. We detected a lot of them in the end of the spring crop. So it was really looking like a potential disaster, and that just didn't happen. We didn't have the population explosion that you would normally expect in August and September. I think we had a lot of help from natural biological control. If you see the adult whitefly stuck on the bottom of the leaf and those white tufts are growing out of them, that's a Syria. It's a natural infection. You can buy products with it in there as well, but it's when it really helps us, I think, is mostly natural infection. I think we had a lot of that last year. But I think we also need to thank cotton growers because they did a much better job of managing whitefly in cotton than they did in 2017. And last year was looking, or 2017? I guess my years are all running together already. But I think they did a much better job, and it's our turn now to help them out for next year. I think we really last year demonstrated the importance of area-wide management. I think we do a good job, our vegetable growers do a good job, particularly in the winter, in the early spring, in most of our spring crops. We've learned the importance of that and do a really good job of crop destruction when we're done with the crop. Probably the potential one exception to that is watermelons, because we've got so many watermelon growers. And watermelons is not a great crop for whiteflies to start with. We don't really have problems with whiteflies in watermelons most years, but they're in those fields. It helps to carry over. It helps to distribute them when we move those watermelon transplants around, first of all, but it helps to get those populations started in regions, in some of the areas where we grow watermelons. And everybody on the line I know can tell me where they drove around in the fall and saw spring watermelon fields still standing. That's not an uncommon sight. I wish it was a very uncommon sight. I think it'd go a long ways towards managing whiteflies if we can get rid of all those watermelon fields, along with all the other crops we're working with. We have not really new insecticide. It's a premix, Sinstar. It's a premix of two products we already use for whitefly, Movento and NAC. If you put out a 10x rate of Sinstar, you're putting out a 10 ounce rate of Sinstar, you're putting out a 5 ounce rate of Movento, which is a full rate. You're putting out a 4 ounce rate of NAC, which is 40% of NAC. So it's not 100% mix, but it's a mix of those two products. It does recommend or really require that you put an adjuvant with it. And that's because of the active ingredient, the spirotetramat Movento is highly systemic, but you've got to get it into plant, and that penetrating adjuvant helps it get into the plant. And we're using it primarily for whiteflies, and that's what I'm going to talk about here. I've done probably close to a dozen studies with Sinstar in multiple crops. In all of them pretty much show what you see here. If you look here, the green line is the Movento, blue line is Sinstar plus Impede as a surfactant, and then the brown line is Sinstar plus Silhouette as a surfactant. And overall, I would say Sinstar definitely works as well as either of the ingredients at maximum rates alone. I don't know that it works better. I can't say that. I haven't seen it do that, but it definitely works as well as those products. So it is a combination that you might consider using for whitefly control. As far as whitefly insecticides, we continue to evaluate them in a number of ways. We do look at adult control. Most of our insecticides target nymphs, but we still look at adult control in some of our studies. We look at a lot of them in the squash system. That's kind of an acid test. Squash reacts to, it produces silverleaf symptoms at very, very low populations of nymphs. So if it works in the squash system, it's an excellent product for whiteflies. And then we also typically look at them in a cucumbers or cantaloupe, usually cucumber system, where we can actually look at nymph counts to see the overall efficacy as well. First of all, as far as adults are concerned, probably our best products are PQZ and Savanto Prime for adult control. For just knocking down adults, those two consistently provide our best knockdown of adults. Probably the next two are going to be XRL and Venom. Venom was not in this test, but those two give fairly good control, and a sale as well will frequently give good reductions of adults. But if you really want to knock them down, you're looking at probably PQZ or Savanto Prime. Looking at the systemic insecticides, we do drench treatments there with this high-tech tool in the middle there. We simulate a drip application or an in-furrow spray and can get pretty good data on that. As you can see, the differences there on the flag is the end of a plot. You can tell where we treated versus untreated. We treat and then look at when silverleaf develops. Again, squash is very sensitive. As soon as you start getting nymphs developing in a crop, you'll get silverleaf. And you can see here the Verimark, Coragen, Savanto Prime, and Venom. We're getting about 2.5, 3 weeks of control with those systemic products applied in furrow. The Admire for about 3 years now has not looked as good as the others. That's where the resistance tends to show up first. But these others are still about 3 weeks. We're never going to get back to 6 weeks or even 4 weeks, I don't think, of control with these products. Hopefully we never go back to like 2009 when we had 1 week of control. I think rotating these products, rotating in other products where possible, is keeping the resistance levels kind of stable. So we can get that about 3 weeks activity out of these systemic products. Foliar applications, we do a similar thing. We'll put on a couple of foliar applications. This is again in the squash system. A lot of these products down here, Knack and Courier, Sinstar, PQZ, we know they have good activity on whiteflies, but they're not that top level that can stand up in this system. The products that tend to stand up again are going to be your Group 28s, X-Rail, which continues to be almost always our best product in every test. It's also our most expensive product, as everyone knows, but it's probably our best product for whiteflies. But Coragen looks very good. Savanto Prime, Venom, and Assail would typically, the Neo-Nick type products and the Group 28s are still our cornerstone products. These others we need to work in though for resistance management where we can. And if you look at those and say a cucumber system where we're actually doing nymph counts instead of just looking at the silverleaf symptoms, again, you can see XRL is at the bottom. It still looks very good, but then these other products, the Knack, Sinstar, PQZ, are giving good control of those nymphs. It just doesn't show up in the squash system because squash is so sensitive. So these are products, you know, I don't think other than Sinstar, we don't have anything new to add to our rotations. I don't think we've lost anything due to resistance though either. So that's the good news. The final thing I'll touch on is virus transmission and can we impact it with insecticides. There's data that says you can under certain situations. I've seen it in very rare circumstances in South Georgia. More frequently, I haven't noted any impact on virus transmission, but we tried to look at that more closely this last year. We went in the squash system again. We're looking not only at silverleaf, but we're looking for cucurbit leaf crumple virus and other viruses in squash. We went in with 10 weekly plantings. We planted once a week from late June through late August. In each planting, we had 4 replications of 4 treatments. We had a Verimark drench, which we put at planting. Everything's direct seeded. We drenched the day we seeded. We drenched 3 weeks later. Not something I would recommend in the field, but it gives us probably our best treatment for nymphs. We did a PQZ foliar. We started 1 week after seeding. So we're basically spraying that first application on cotyledons and then spraying weekly from there. The PQZ should give us excellent control of adults and stop feeding by adults, hopefully impacting virus transmission. And then we did a combination of the Verimark, PQZ, and untreated control. Trying to make this long story short, the red and blue lines are the check and the Verimark alone treatments. This is whitefly adults. The black and gray lines are where we sprayed the PQZ. So you can see that we did impact adult populations where we sprayed PQZ. We didn't have a lot of impact with the Verimark alone. The other thing you can see here is if you look in these August timeframe going into September, that's where we really would have expected those whitefly numbers to just continue climbing and explode. And it just simply didn't happen last spring. And again, I think that has a lot to do with just area-wide management of the pest. But the PQZ did what we were hoping to do as far as adult control. This is silverleaf ratings. The red and black lines are the silverleaf in the Verimark treated or Verimark plus PQZ treated plots. We did reduce silverleaf in those plots. So those treatments, the Verimark did what we expected as far as nymph control. Now, when you go back and look at virus in the plots, first of all, we had very little virus early. The first two plantings basically didn't have any virus until we were a couple weeks into harvest, which is what we tried to do. We wanted to get out there early. The later plantings got virus very early, shortly after, about 2 weeks after planting. And there's obviously no impact there. All the lines are on top of each other. So under that heavy pressure, insecticides had no impact. Then we want to look at kind of in the middle here. Long story short, there was no significant effect of insecticides. And if you look at planting 4, you can see some variation there. But we actually ended up with the lowest amount of virus in the untreated in that case. So overall, this study, the PQZ did what it could do as far as controlling adults. The Verimark did what it could do as far as controlling nymphs, but it really did not impact virus transmission in our system in South Georgia. And again, I think it's because we do have a lot of white flies, and when the virus moves in, it doesn't move in slowly. When it appears, it tends to come in pretty rapidly. And I'll conclude with that and take any questions if there are any.
Stormy, I was going to say, I noticed that you said that the whitefly numbers seem to go down some in August. Isn't that kind of when we started having that 3-week period where it's so wet?
Yeah, that helped some. We didn't have it, not in that time frame. I don't think we really had a tropical system type where we got a lot of rain everywhere all at once. And that's where we get our greatest impact from environment. But yes, heavy rain will knock down adults. But when you're getting those spotty showers, it doesn't have near the impact that an overall system moving through the area does. But yeah, that probably helped us some as well. And it helps get the humidity up, which helps the Aciaria. A lot of the biological controls, fungi that attack whiteflies and that you can purchase and spray can work very well if you've got the right humidity and the right temperatures. Unfortunately, whitefly love hot, dry weather, which is not good for the fungus in most cases. But yeah, the rain could have helped us as well. But I think a lot of it, we just didn't have the constant influx of whiteflies from cotton for 3 months that we can have, and we've experienced in the past sometimes.
Okay, thank you.
All right, are there any more questions? And Babesh, if you want to go next, you should be able to start sharing your screen.
Sure.
I just want to remind everybody in between speakers here, if you do want pesticide credit, you need to comment in the chat box with your name, your county, and your pesticide license number, and whether or not you want CCA credits or CEUs. So if you want just one more chance to do that while we're still getting started here, and we'll let Babesh go ahead with his talk.
Well, thank you, Ty. Thank you all. Good afternoon. Today I'm going to touch base on some of the important points and some of the important fungicide resistance issue, which I want to put forth in today's presentation. To start with, anthracnose and cucurbits. agents and the growers who are working on, who grow their cucurbits, they might have come across this issue from last couple of years. And this issue actually became problematic last year, pretty much across all cucurbits, but cucumbers are mostly affected. What we did when we looked at some of the field failures in Tiff County and Colquitt and other nearby counties, we went and we got those isolates, we checked those isolates for the resistance against quadris and cabrio. And the thing which we found that nearly 70% of the isolates we collected, they are resistant to quadris. So quadris is not working. And nearly 50% of the isolates were resistant to cabrio. So it seems like there's some kind of cross resistance going on between quadris and cabrio. And cabrio still has some efficacy, but I would be very careful when you have to use cabrio. So this this is a typical symptom of anthracnose. Those who have not seen anthracnose before, you will see the big lesions. The lesion starts from the smaller lesions. It favors warm and humid conditions that we see here in Georgia. As the disease progresses, the lesions become bigger, and in severe cases, you will see the short holding. The bad part of the anthracnose is that this pathogen can also infect fruits. And if you have a fruit infection, then you know what can happen. It can open the avenues for other secondary pathogens to get in and rot the onions or rot these melons and cucurbits. Anthracnose in some cases can also be transmitted to other healthy melons or healthy cucurbits when you put them inside the bin. So there is also a post-harvest issue with this. Traditionally we've been relying only on group 11s like quadris and cabrio, and we used to use Bravo in between, and sometimes we used to use group 3s or group 7s. But it seems group 11, we have to be very careful. And maybe I'm recommending that if you have to use group 11s like quadris, use it early in the season, very early in the season. Do not expect quadris to clean up your anthracnose when you have a heavy anthracnose infection in the field. Well, now we have a situation on hand last year. So what I did, I just went to the Blackboard and see what else is labeled on cucurbits with respect to fungicides, and and among all these fungicides, how many of them has actual efficacy on anthracnose. So we did a trial. This is a snapshot of this is summary of the trial. We looked at all these fungicides which are labeled on cucurbits except one, which is pyrazoflumate, which is yet to be labeled. And we looked at the anthracnose efficacy, and we use cucumber as our model host because cucumbers are quite sensitive to anthracnose. So what you are seeing is the area under disease progress curve, which is the total disease in a season. And I was able to rank these fungicides based on their efficacy on anthracnose. So most of the cucurbit growers use Proline for their gummy control. I'm talking about the foliar application, not the soil applications, only for fusarium. So when Proline is applied as foliar, it can provide you some most of the gummy efficacy, and you may get some powdery efficacy too. But in our trial, we found that yes, indeed, Proline was also very effective, highly to moderately effective against anthracnose. Topsin is a group 1 fungicide. It also has a good bit of efficacy in anthracnose. And good thing is that they belong to two different frac code. Luna Experience, most of our growers use Luna Experience. Most of our growers use Approvia Top and Mirvis Prime. So good thing is that these fungicides being applied for gummy control, and they can give you dual efficacy against anthracnose too. Bravo by itself is okay. It is as good as cabrio. And then we know that 50% of our isolates are already resistant to cabrio. So Bravo can bring something to the game if you want to use as a rotation partner or tank mixing. So I would definitely add Bravo. But what I would not use is Manzate. Manzate, I did not find any efficacy on anthracnose. So Quadris did not show anything. You can see Quadris we have nearly 75% disease severity, AUDPC values compared to non-treated check. And this shows that quad risk indeed is not working. So what I'm recommending, follow a very good fungicide rotation regime should include Proline, Topsin, Luna, Mervis Prime, if possible Merivon, and Aprovia Top. I need to check if Merivon is labeled on other cucurbits other than watermelon. So, but Mervis Prime and Aprovia Top is. Also, if possible, add Bravo as a tank mix partner. Most of our melon growers use Bravo until fruit set, so that will bring something to the game. But some of our cucumber growers and also and other cucumber growers also rely on Bravo. So addition of Bravo as a tank mix or a rotation partner is good for anthracnose control. The other, culturally, anthracnose is bad in those fields where crop debris is not well managed. If a grower can manage their crop debris, for example, if once they are done with their crops, just bury those debris in the soil so that they can deteriorate. One good thing with anthracnose is that the spores cannot survive in the soil for a longer period. Unless there is a debris in the soil or any kind of plant tissue in the soil, they cannot survive in the bare soil. So removal of crop debris is a good cultural practice. Uh, uh, I think that's it for anthracnose. So I just mentioned the possible fungicide options, so I'm not going to reiterate that. I'm going to go ahead. Let's talk something about Phytophthora capsicum. We'll start with cucurbits, then we'll go to pepper. So anthracnose, Phytophthora capsicum was a problem last year because we had so much of rain events during our crop growth period, especially during fruiting. We had some issues with PCAP. Nothing, as I mentioned, and I've been preaching for the last 3-4 years, that even if you use the strongest fungicide programs like in PCAP, if your weather do not cooperate, these fungicide programs may not help give you the full efficacy. So anyway, so in the best possible scenario, what you can do? So in squash and cantaloupe, what you can do? You can start with Presidio as a drip, as a soil application. And then you can come back with Aroundis Ultra. I'm recommending Aroundis Ultra because Aroundis Ultra can give you dual efficacy against not only PCAP, but also against downy. So you have to take care of downy on these cucurbit crops too. And after Aroundis Ultra, you can come back with Illumine and so forth. One thing which I have noticed in my trials that if you add some kind of phosphites in between as a tank mix or as a rotation, or along with Bravo in between, that gives a kick to your fungicide program. So phosphites are highly systemic and they do a decent to moderate job in oomycete control, like PCAP and downies. So I would recommend that. All right, I'm gonna talk about watermelon PCAP in next slide, but let's finish the pepper PCAP. So pepper, most of our papers on drip and plastic. So this is what I recommend for pepper PCAP. Start with Aroundis Gold as a drip or whatever soil application you can do, and then come back with Presidio. Then Illumine, you have a choice. You can go with as a drip or foliar, but don't use both. Use either. Either application methods, and then you can use a reverse as a foliar application. And again, phosphites can help if you add them in the fungicide program. So that's for PCAP control and pepper and cucurbits. I'm going to show you some data, some work which we've been doing in Brooks County on melon PCAP and watermelon PCAP. So this is the third year of our grower trial in Brooks County. This particular field has a history of PCAP from the last 4 or 5 years, and every year we see this disease. The particular site where we chose to do this trial is a low spot in the field so that we ensure that they will see some kind of infection. So 3 programs we tried, and these programs came out of 9 different programs which tried over the last 3-4 years. So these are the 3 best programs we thought we should look at this year. So first program comprised of Presidio followed by Orondis, and we added K-Fat as a tank mix in our program, and our spray started right after fruit set, and we sprayed every 7 to 10 day interval. The another program comprised of Actigard. We started with the Actigard application, and then we had Orondis and Presidio. We did not add any phosphates in this program. The third program comprised of Presidio, Orondis and Illumine rotation. This is a high dollar rotation we used. The one thing which we followed, that all three programs did very well compared to non-treated check. What these numbers suggest, fruit rot incidence. We took the fruit rot incidence right at harvest, and whatever fruits that looked good, we kept it in the storage and evaluated them after 3 days. And whatever numbers you're seeing is the combination of both fruit rot at harvest and fruit rot after storage. So altogether, we are seeing all three programs doing well. The program that comprised of Presidio, Orondis, and phosphites did significantly better than these two programs. The program that comprised of Presidio, Orondis, and Illumine did fair, and it was looking good. The program where we had Actigard, Orondis, and Presidio, it also did well, but it was not numerically, it was a little higher than other two programs. So what we are recommending, this is what we are recommending. Start your spray at fruit set. You can start with either Presidio, or you can start with the Orondis Ultra, and you can come back with Illumine or Illumine or Presidio. I would also use phosphide as a tank mix or as a rotation in between, and that's what we are recommending. And again, the important point is that everything looks good right now, but if you have a weather condition if you have unfavorable weather conditions, then none of these programs will work. So okay, Jeremy Kickler need waiting room. Okay, I admitted him. All right, so we are cool with PCAP. So we have learned about PCAP in pepper, PCAP in squash and cucumber, and PCAP on watermelon. Those are three different, I have shown you three different scenarios and three different fungicide programs which our growers can follow. I'm switching gears now. I'm going to talk a little bit about southern blight. Southern blight the southern blight in tomato. We did a trial last year, and we looked at the efficacy of Quadris, which is labeled for southern blight in tomato. But problem is that you cannot use Quadris early on. You have to, because you get phytotoxicity or stunting of the plant. You have to stick to the label. We applied Quadris after 3 weeks of transplanting. So anyway, we compared Quadris, Fontellis, and Top Guard EQ. Top Guard EQ is from FMC. It's a premix of Quadris and a group 7 fungicide, flutriafol or Top Guard. So we looked at the efficacy, and 2 rates of Top Guard were evaluated, 7 fluid ounce and 14 fluid ounce. So what you're seeing in the 2 columns, initial and final, is the initial disease incidence when we started evaluating symptoms, and the final. And final means right at harvest or harvest maturity. We found all these fungicide programs started, all these fungicide did quite well. And they were able to reduce the disease incidence significantly from the non-treated check. Numerically, Fontellis and Quadris did quite well. Even Top Guard EQ at 2 different rates was also looking good, but there is no rate effect. 7 fluid ounces are as good as 14 fluid ounce per acre. So now one thing we have to consider, if you want to use Quadris and Top Guard as a rotation, I would be careful, because Top Guard is a premix. It also has a Quadris, so I don't recommend back-to-back application of Top Guard followed by Quadris. So what I recommend, use Top Guard EQ, and then you can come back with Fontellis if you can. But again, Top Guard is also group 7 and Fontellis group 11, but they are within the group 7s, they are in 2 different subgroups. So that gives some kind of minor rotation, but this is what we are restricted to. So what we are suggesting, use Fontellis, use Quadris, use Top Guard EQ, and be mindful of the label. Powdery mildew. Powdery mildew. What's new with powdery mildew? As of in 2020, I just mentioned that there are two different fungicides, Catton and Vivando, which received label on all cucurbits against powdery mildew. And last year I looked at their efficacy. I've been looking at their efficacy in the last 3 years, and this is the one last year efficacy trial. And we saw that indeed Gatton and Vivando, they are doing a great job in reducing, in controlling powdery mildew. They are as good as Quintec ProLine rotation. So, what we are recommending that be mindful, use Gatton and Vivando, and you can also use Quintec in a rotation program for powdery control. So just to reiterate what I've been teaching, that Vivando, it's labeled on, it's a novel group 8 fungicide, and it's labeled for all cucurbits. Only one rate is labeled 15.4 ounce. And the excellent thing with this product is the pH of 0 day. Same with Gatton. It just received a label expansion to all cucurbits now. 6 to 8 ounce rate is good. 8 ounce is consistent, has shown consistent results. Then 6 ounce rate, again, it's as with Gatton, as with Vivando, it has a pH of 0 day, which is very helpful for our growers. Okay, switching gears. So downing. So every year I do an individual fungicide trial and also do different program trials. So I'm going to show you the data on individual fungicide trial to see how different fungicides are doing in Georgia against downy. So this trial was done in cucumber, and we saw that Illumin, Ranman, Previgra Flex, Orandis, just appear Orandis, not Orandis in the premix. They're either highly or moderately effective against downy. So there in some other states, I've heard that Previgra Flex been a little weak, and Ranman is also being weak in NC State and also a little bit in some of the regions in Florida, but it's still working in Georgia. So our population is still sensitive to these products. The thing which is not working is Curzet. It was strange to me because some of the products like Ariston and all, they used to work in 2015, 2016 until 2017. But now it seems I'm seeing some field insensitivity to Curzet or Ariston. Revus lost its efficacy. You cannot control downy with Revus. So come on, I think it got stuck. Okay, all right. Switching gears to another important issue, which specifically to brassica growing counties, and Colquitt County is the largest brassica producing county in the state. Alternaria leaf blight and head rot has been a huge issue for brassica growers, both in headed and non-headed brassicas. Most of you have seen Alternaria. They are familiar with the symptoms. The symptoms starts with small lesions, underside or upper side of the leaf. These lesions grow bigger, and you can see these concentric circles, these lesions, and with a copious amount of sporulation. The lesions in leafy brassicas, these lesions and these symptomatic leaves will render the crop unmarketable, whereas in headed brassicas like broccoli, cabbage, cauliflower, and so forth, if these lesions fall on the head, they not only ruin the head, but also they open the avenues for the secondary rotters to come in and rot this bulb, rot the head. I'm going to show you some examples, some pictures. This is in collard, and you can see there's Alternaria, these nice concentric spots. This is what I was talking about. If the Alternaria falls on this head, you can see this. I cannot show you the cursor in Zoom, but I hope you can see these holes or these black lesions on these heads. And when you scrape these florets, you will see these lesions go down to the pedicel and to the stalk, And we were able to not only isolate Alternaria, but we were able to isolate soft rotting bacteria. So that means not only they open the avenue for other Alternarians to come in, but also bad soft rotters, and that makes this thing unmarketable. So we were funded from USDA, and Jeremy Kickler and Ty Torrance are a part of this grant where we propose to survey our brassica fields in Georgia, and it's not limited to only Tift, Colquitt, and other counties, but it's also open to other counties who grow brassicas, and also in North Georgia. So who's willing to survey their fields, let us know, and we'll be happy to help you out. So based on 2020 survey, we collected nearly 80 isolates, and most of the isolates which we collected, we found that they are either moderately resistant or highly resistant to quadris. And we are yet to see the sensitivity to the group 7 fungicides, which we plan to do, and group 3s too. So hang on for other results maybe in 6 months. We'll let you guys know. So with respect to fungicide program, what else can be done? So we have looked at different fungicides, heavily relied on group 7s, but we also included group 9 premixes, 9 and 12 premixes, and also group 3s. What we found that Switch, Endura, and Pristine, they had some level of efficacy. I would say moderate level of efficacy. Other thing which we found that Inspire Super, which is also labeled, it has some moderate level of efficacy and reducing foliar severity and head rot. The thing which is not working is Cabrio and Quadris. It doesn't do any good against Alternaria. The other thing with the Alternaria control is Bravo. Bravo does a decent job, very good job in managing Alternaria, especially in headed brassicas where you can spray Bravo. I would like to spray Bravo even beyond the headset, and just be careful of any kind of injury to the head. But other than that, Bravo does a decent job. So this is what we are recommending for headed brassicas. You can use Bravo until head development. You can go beyond the head development too. Just be mindful, and try to rotate your fungicide program with some of the group 7s like Funtalis and Endura, and Switch. And also you can also use Inspire Super. So that will give you a good bit of rotation. But another important thing, whenever you use this fungicide, make sure you look for the groups. I would not come back to back with same group. For example, I would not spray Endura and Fontalis back to back. I would rotate with something else, either group 3s, group 9 and 12 premixes, or other premixes. But I would not come back with the same one. But another thing is that I would not spray any quad. I would not rely on group 11 solely, like quadris. So, but in leafy brassicas, the complexities are at different levels. There we cannot use Bravo. So what we are proposing, use phosphites, either K-phyte, Prophyte, whatever phosphate you want to use as a protectant, use it. We have some data, not from last year, a year before, where we have seen that use of phosphites can help. But it's not as good as Bravo, but it does something. The other thing with the phosphites in brassicas is that it will give you protection against downy mildew of brassicas. So you can get some dual efficacy of using phosphites. And again, I'm preaching the same thing, use these fungicides, which I showed here, but be mindful of good rotation. All right, while talking about brassicas, downy and brassicas, we looked at the brassicas fungicides against downy mildews. We looked at Presidio, Illumin, and B10365, which is another numbered compound from Valent, and we found that all these products look good on brassica downy. Particularly V10365 looks numerically better than other two. So, well, with this, I'd like to conclude my presentation, and we'll be happy to get questions.
Babesh,
Yes, Ross.
when you were talking about the alternaria, are you saying that the alternaria can kind of open up the door for the bacterial soft rot?
Yes.
Okay. So by controlling, trying to be more preventative and controlling that, then you can try to protect the head better.
Yes.
Okay.
Andre, you should be able to start sharing your screen whenever you're ready.
Can you guys see my screen now?
Yep, looks good.
Good, perfect.
Whenever you're
So,
ready.
all right. So good afternoon, guys. I don't want to take long on this. I know that it's a bunch of things to be done, and I wish we could be meeting, like Ty said in the beginning, in person, but under the currently circumstance, we're gonna need to do that online. So today I just want to be brief about some crop production updates for the 2021 coming season. I would like to start with the spring variety trials. Ty asked me to put some variety evaluation that we did in the last year, and I'm also showing something that was not last year but was the year before that is important to mention it here. Then just talk a little bit about whiteflies later. So just a tomato variety trial, like usually we did a tomato variety trial. We have been evaluating some similar varieties as before, and our results has been very consistent across the years. There are new varieties that were introduced in the market, but we did not test them yet. So just keep in mind there might be something new for you, but that's a very important one that I would like to share with you. So last year, our variety trial, we do it in plastic mulching as always, and drip tape, following the UGA recommendations. In red on this graph here, we have our total yield according to variety. So as you can see, everything in red were our top varieties, and they were not significantly different. So it means that we can opt for them. There is a little bit of variation between them, but they were all good variety. Myrtle is considered a new. It's been 2 years in the market right now, and it's a very good variety that yield as high as Ready Bounty. That is a well-known one. So it's an option for you guys. So just for keep in mind, those are the varieties that we did. I just want to go straight to the tomatoes because we did not get much problems with sunburn last year, but just keep in mind that every year is different. With this warmer winter, that could be a problem if we have a fast growth. So keep in mind when you are planting your tomatoes, you do a very good fertilization program as well as an irrigation program, and keep tracking of your nutrients. Yeah, just showing what's going on. So a zucchini variety trial for the spring. We also tested 11 varieties. Those are same varieties that we also tested in the fall, but right now I just want to show the spring trial. And I can anticipate you guys like the tomato one. I just divided here by fence fruit and medium fruits. So the varieties SV6009 and SV0914 were our one of our top one, but they were also steam, payload, and respect. Our top varieties here, we have yield again per variety. One thing that we saw that Spineless King was a variety that did not yield very well in our spring trial, but in our fall trial, particularly Spineless King did well because under the whitefly pressure, I like a little bit the results. I'm gonna show you later the Spineless King, but keep in mind that during the whitefly season, it was a good variety. So it's an option for you guys. Here is just three, as you know, it has a good Justice and Conquer 3. They both have a good disease package. Although they were not in our top yields one, they can provide during the summertime, they can provide a better disease resistance. So keep it in mind that we are not only playing with yield, we might gonna have the disease pressure. So that's something that you guys should be paying attention. Moving on, this is the cabbage trial that one was not conducted last spring. It was conducted in the spring before last in 2019. So I just want to show like the results that we got. I separate here for first, second, and third harvest because we did 3 harvests in this cabbage variety trial, and they were early, late, mid, and late varieties. So for our early varieties, on the TC549 Tropicana Extreme Vanish, they were the toppest one. However, I just want to keep in mind, you guys in mind, the TCA549, it's American Tack variety. It was discontinued, so we will not have that one in the market anymore. So if you want to do early varieties, I would stay with Tropicana and Extreme Vanish. Second harvest, Bronco, Cheers, Precision, Grand Vanish, Saint, and Vestry did very well. So most of our varieties, like most of growers, like go with Bronco and Cheers. So they are mid-season, and then they were one of our top varieties. So yes, they were still good. We can continue with those varieties. And finally, if you are target a late market, Expat was a very good variety. They have big heads, and but they are a longer season, so you're just gonna need to take care of this crop for more time. But it was a very good, I like it. Expect particularly, it's a larger head, very dense, so it's something that you can keep in mind depending on your market. Sweet corn variety, last year we did varieties during the spring and fall. I want to show just the data for the spring, but if you want to get access to our fall variety trial as well, just contact me. I can send you that. If you are a grower that are not in the 3-county, Colquitt, Worth, or Tift County, I also did it in the Southwest, all the way in Mitchell County. So, and Decatur as well. So you can just contact me. I can share information there. But here is the data for Worth County. We did with Scott Carlson, and those are the variety that we tested. Passion, the SC1336, Obsession, Affection, some new ones from Seminis as well, the Syngenta, the 1075, 821, 1170, and the Coastal and Flagger from Harrismore. There we go. So like all other variety trials, I like to make it simple, the presentation. So here it's crates per acre, and our top varieties are shown in yellow, like we were expecting. Passion had our highest yields, but it was not different from several others, like the 1075, Obsession, the 7143, the SCB6, Affection, and the 1170. I just highlighted here that Flagger and Coastal, they were a variety that they did not present our highest yield. They were not in our group for the highest yield, but they had our bigger ears, and they were having 2 ears per plant in average. That not 2 in average, was 1 something, but there was a lot of plants with 2 ears. So for those growers who pick twice their sweet corn, that would be an option if they did pick in the second year as well. But paying attention on your germination rate, Passion and Obsession, and the 1075 were the varieties that had a very high germination rate, and that's why we got our highest yield. So that's a very important for sweet corn production. So just to have an overview of our sweet corn in the field last year, you can see the big ears of our Flagler, our Coastal, smaller ears for Passion and Obsession as well. So just to you guys to have an overview, how was our variety trial and our years from last year. So switching gears about variety trial, I'm gonna talk about whitefly manage really quick as well. If I did not cover a particular crop that you are growing, like broccoli or bell pepper, Please feel free to contact me or contact Ty. He can ask me for our evaluations. We have information for these other crops as well. So feel free to contact. So whitefly manage overview, I just would like to emphasize, yes, we are in the red zone. If you look in the past 2 years, 2018, 2019, I didn't do the analysis for this year yet, but what Apurba Barman collected in his samples, weekly samples, you see in the red zones, that's where we are. Yes, we are in the red zone. So we need to keep our eyes on the whitefly during the season. In our past data, we saw that the peak of our whitefly is during August 15 and September 15. So those are the windows that we have to keep our spring programs to make sure that our transplants are not being affected. I'm particularly talking about cucurbits, yellow squash, and zucchini. That's what I have been doing more my research part. And our planting date of September 15 has shown our best results for yield wise, and because it reduced the instance or the number of virus, the rate of virus that we get in the field. But if you pass too much and you go all the way to first week of October to plant it, you will not be able to pick, do multiple harvesting, because in the past 2 years we were affected by the winter and our plants just stopped flowering. So don't go further than October for sure, and try to stay in the September 15. So we're gonna need to manage this. So an alternative to continue that, we have been evaluating the use of row covers as an alternative during the whitefly season. So we did some structures like this during the field. I know that some growers in the Colquitt County have used row covers during the early spring. During the cold condition, they have been using plastic. So some of growers already have the experience to do row cover. The reason they are doing in the spring is to warm up plants so they can grow faster and they can target a different market, a very early market. So when the price of yellow squash and zucchini are higher. So if you are one of those growers, know that you can start to use that during the whitefly season. It's going to reduce your cost with insecticides, and will keep your plants disease free and insect free as well. So just for you to have an idea. So we did 2 years of trials in the station, and that's some virus incidents that we got. So here we have a scale of virus that we gave from 0 to 5 for all our plants. We did plant in September 16, and we have row covers with the black line and no covers with the dash lines. So as you can see, we have the crop development and the incidence of virus increase as we do the transplants, and then the plants come up. So here is when we remove the cover for no cover. We need to remove the cover to allow for pollination, and then we start to see virus coming. But virus on no cover starts since the beginning. So that's why we have the effect in yield. So that's the main point of we are doing the cover. Avoid an early season virus instance. And when we did that, you can see that it hold us for 1, 2, 3, 4, almost 5 weeks with no virus. When plants are big enough, the virus, yes, is present in the plant, but it's not affecting yield as much as if it was in the early season. So this is just for you to have an idea. This is a curve of our biomass accumulation, which you can associate to the size of plant. So once again, the row covers shows is in the black line, while the dash line is our no cover. So you see how higher or how bigger is our plants on the row covers when compared to the no covers, and that's because of the virus and the insect-free environment that you create with the cover. We removed the cover when plants is starting to flowering and fruiting. So here is the point. So just for you to have an idea what is best. Consequently, our yields were much higher in the row cover with no cover. But these are some results that we did in the station, small plots, and sometimes you can ask, oh, but what's a grower standpoint of view? So we also tested in a larger scale with a collaborator grower you see that we did not use only our conventional row covers, which is about 2 feet above or 2 or 3 feet above the plants. We also use some block cover like strawberry covers to see what would be impact. But we also tested white plastic versus silver plastic. So we did test it in a large scale. Once we did it, similar to our plants growth there, you're gonna see that now the row covers, yes, it still allow our bigger plots. The block cover, it's how could I say, it's protect the plants, but it also don't allow plants to go much taller and don't accumulate too much biomass. But it's a virus and insect free environment, so that's good. While the no cover, it's our lowest line here, so it's not good at all for the plant. So if you are using silver plastic, you're gonna see that the row cover will work good. With the block cover, will also work, but not as good as the row cover. Oops. And no cover, it's not doing very well. In white plastic, our plants did not achieve the highest point of the highest biomass accumulation. You see this point here at 9 October is when our plants stopped growing and started to flowering. They are not growing leaves anymore. They are dedicating their energy to flower and fruiting. But here we never had this point. So which means that we could grow those plants larger. So white plastic was not as good as the silver plastic, and still by the end of the season, we would prefer to have row cover than no cover at all. And then in the white one, the block cover did not do very well as in the silver plastic. The effect of yields, I just separate here in silver plastic and white plastic, and you're gonna see that row covers are better than block covers and no covers for the silver plastic, and block covers and row covers in white plastic were better than no cover. So you need to make a balance between if you are using silver plastic overall or white plastic. Overall, row covers were better than no covers, but it can be used with block covers for you to if you are opting to do white plastic. This is a first year of data in a grower's field. We're going to repeat it, but we have been in 3 different years testing it, and then these row covers have been something optimal. We still don't have an economic analysis for you, but we can tell you we did not spray anything in the covers, and we did spray in the no covers. So that's something that you guys can keep in mind, a reduction or a better economic or benefits of the using those covers. Cultivar selection during the whitefly season for cucurbits. I just want to touch base with you guys about yellow squash and zucchini. Grand Prize, Gold Prize, and Lioness are still our toppest cultivars during the whitefly season, while the SV0914 Paycheck and Spineless Beauty were our toppest varieties during the whitefly season for zucchini. So if you are going for those crops during the whitefly season, I would recommend one of those 3 varieties for each of those crops. So I don't want to go longer. That's what I will have to present for you. And I'm open for questions. If you need more crop information for variety selection or cultivar, just let me know. Like I said, Ty is there. I can talk with Ty and we can help you guys on whatever you need. Thank you.
Any questions for Andre? And Abby, you should be able to start getting your screen.
Well, Ty, there are a couple of points I want to reiterate here.
Go ahead.
Some of our growers, especially in Decatur County and other Southwest, in other counties in Southwest District, they use your silver plastic. Not all, some do. And what we have seen in this trial with Andre and Dr. Sparks, that there's an effect of mulching, type of mulch you use, either white plastic or silver mulch, but you will get a better benefit if you have a row covers. And also the benefit with respect to the disease and the whitefly counts, which it's not shown over here, but other thing which we have seen that irrespective of type of plastic you use, row covers and really helps. And Andre has also shown that it also has an effect on your yield. But how first of all, we need to see how better it can, is it compatible to our systems, different systems. Is some of the tomato growers used to do it in Decatur County, but I don't know how is it compatible to our cucumber systems. And other thing which we have not touched base is if you put the row covers under the squash under the plastic, you'll have an issue with the powdery. So those aspects still need to be investigated. So, but this was the first attempt by the vegetable team to see the impact of the row covers and the type of plastic on virus incidence, yield, and whitefly. So,
Thank you, Dr. Babesh. If there are no questions for Andre, we'll go ahead and let Dr. Abbey get started with his update on nematode management.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep, we got you.
All right, great. Hello, everyone. I hope you had a good day today. I'm going to talk about a little bit about the nematicide on vegetable crops. Here's the table for non-fumigant nematicide that are labeled for use in vegetable and cucumber beets. Nothing's been introduced recently. You all are familiar with all of these products. So Widate, Nimitz, Velon Prime, and Movento are chemical nematicide for drip application for nematode control, especially root knot nematode, which is the #1 nematode issue in vegetable crops. We also have 2 other biologically based nematicide, which are marketed for use in vegetable crops. For sure, since they are biological, their efficacy are lower than chemical nematicide. So there are a couple of new nematicide in the development process. One of them is Salibro, which might be in the market this year or maybe next year. There's also 1 or 2 seed treatment nematicide in the development process, but they just have started recently. They might take a few years to get into the market. In terms of the fumigant nematicide, nothing being developed recently to replace those nematicide that we lost, including methylbromide and pallidine. They are all old products that you all are familiar with. We have done a few nematicide, fumigant and non-fumigant nematicide that I'd like to share with you some of the data. Here is the trial that we did to see the efficacy of single and mixed application of Nimitz and metam-KLR. This is different. The metam-KLR is different than metam-potassium. We tried to see how these the single or combined application of these 2 nematicides can help to control the nematode, especially root knot nematode and the growth of the tomato. We did this in this past year. The variety of tomato we used was Roadster. There was 5 treatment, including Nimitz at 5 pints per acre, which was applied. There's some changes in the, anyway, these application time moved a little bit toward the top. Anyway, the Nimitz was applied 1 week before planting based on the label metam-KLR at 45 gallons per acre, 2 weeks before planting. Nimitz plus metam-KLR, they were applied as a mixture. They were applied 2 weeks before planting. And then we had the Picolor 60 that was fumigated at the rate of 35 gallons per acre, 3 weeks before planting. And also we had the untreated check. Nimids, metam KLR, and their mixture were applied through deep irrigation on the plastic bed, and the drip tape spacing of 12-inch. There was 4 application per treatment, and also Picolor 60 was injected into the soil at the depths of 12-inch. And then at the end of the growing season, we basically collect some data on the root galling severity caused by nematode, and also the nematode counts at the end of the season and the yield. So when I will talk in the following slide about the gall index, basically this is what I'm going to talk about. The gall index, we use a scale of 0 to 5. 0 means no gall were seen on the roots. And then you can see the other scale. 1 means a few galls were seen on the roots. 2 means less than 25% of the roots were galled. 3 means between 26 to 50% of the root galled. 4 means between 51 to 75, and then 5 means more than 70% of the roots were galled. Here you can see a schematic. This is basically this is an example of a cantaloupe or watermelon roots, but in terms of the rating of the galling, there is no difference between basically the vegetable crops in terms of the rating. So basically we follow the same method from 0 to 5, okay? So here is the data for what I've just talked about, the gall index, again, 0 to 5. Here you can see at the end of the growing season, among all of the treatment, Picolor 60 had numerically less gall compared to a mix of Nimids and metam KLR and a single application of Nimids. Basically, the Picolor 60, Nimids and metam KLR, Nimids and metam KLR and Nimids application, they all had a similar efficacy in terms of the reduction of gall index compared to metam KLR as a single application and untreated check. However, as you can see, the single application of metam KLR, it didn't really show any efficacy in terms of the nematode control. You can even see there is no significant difference between the untreated check and the metam KLR. So in terms of the nematode counts, at the end of the growing season, we basically sample the plots, and then we wash the soil, and then we count the number of the nematode per 100 cc of soil. As you can see, we had almost the same story as we saw for the gall index. Metam KLR, Picolor 60 did a better job, at least numerically, compared to the mixture of Nimids and metam KLR and single application of the Nimids. The same thing for the metam KLR, single application of metam KLR. There was no difference between these treatment with the untreated check. Moving forward, you can see the data for the yield, the efficacy of these treatment on the yield. Basically, for such a trial that we do in the station, we don't expect to see significant difference between the treatment because the plot are small, and then the population or the pressure of the nematode might not be that high, but at least we can see the variation in terms of the fruit yield. Again, as you can see, the Picolor 60 had a better yield compared to the other treatment, at least numerically, the better yield, followed by combined application of Nimids and metam KLR. Again, single application of metam KLR didn't really have did a good job in terms of the yield. So to conclude, the companies are trying to see, as you might know, Nimids is expensive compared to the other non-fumigant nematicide. It is a little bit expensive, that's why they are trying to see if they can combine these nematicides with other nematicides like metamKLR. But as you can see, metamKLR, as far as nematicide efficacy, doesn't have anything to offer. It might have some other efficacy against other pathogens like weeds or fungal disease, but honestly, I don't know. Maybe some people, they can do more trial on these two combination of these two nematicides to see if the metamKLR can really help with other pathogens. Moving forward, another actually effective management technique for the control of root knot nematode in tomato is the reuse of resistant varieties. These techniques has been used significantly or considerably in California. But the number of the growers that are currently using resistant varieties of tomato in Georgia are not many. I'm glad here you can see the resistant varieties comes from a gene called MI gene. This MI gene is effective against 3 species of root knot nematode: Melodigon incognita, Melodigon aronaria, and Melodigon javanica. Hopefully, or not hopefully, all these 3 species are widespread in the vegetable production system in the southern Georgia. Based on the survey we did, incognita is the most prevalent, followed by aronaria and javanica. That means that the resistant varieties are basically good option for control of these 3 species of nematode. Here is the table of the varieties that are available in the market. You can easily find them as some of them are, you can see they have a different level of resistance against root knot nematode. Some of them are moderately resistant, some of them are resistant, and some of them are highly resistant. So I'm glad that Dr. Da Silva in his talk, he mentioned about the variety trial that he did in 2019. I think he tested around, I think 14 or 19 different tomato varieties. And as you notice, these 2, Red Bounty and Myrtle, were included in his trial. And interestingly, these 2 varieties had an excellent, or were the top 2 varieties in terms of the yield production, in terms of the yield productivity. That means that these varieties, especially the resistant varieties of tomato, can not only helps to suppress the root knot nematode, but also they can provide high yield for the growers. I would recommend you to consider using these resistant varieties, especially if you are producing multiple vegetables on the same plastic beds. I'm going to provide you some data about the resistant versus susceptible tomato varieties for root knot nematode control. Again, this past year, we did a test at the station. We had 2 tomato varieties: Roadster, which is susceptible to root knot nematode. We had Red Bounty, which is resistant to root knot nematode. We also had 4 different nematicides: non-fumigant nematicide, Majestin, again, it's a biological product, Vided, Velomprime, and Nimitz. That all these products were applied through drip irrigation. And then all of them at the transplanting, okay? Let's see some data in terms of the gall index against the gall index from 0 to 5. As you can see, all the resistant variety, Red Bounty, treated with nematicide, with 4 nematicide, they had a significantly lower gall index compared to compared to the untreated check, resistant untreated check, as well as untreated check of susceptible and treated with the nematicide. You can see even the resistant variety had a very low, very low gall index, less than around 0.5, which is a minor severity of galling. In terms of the counting, nematode count in the soil, the same story. You can see the resistant variety had a significantly lower nematode count compared to these three treatment, magestine, untreated check, and vellum prime for the susceptible tomato. However, as you can see, there is no difference between these treatment compared to the susceptible varieties of tomato treated with Nimitz and vellum prime. But you can still see there is a huge difference in terms of the number of the nematode in the soil at the end of the season. These two are almost 200 nematode per 100 cc of soil, and these are around at most 30 or 40 nematode in the soil. So that's let's move forward with the in terms of the yield. You can see there is no significant difference between the yield of resistant varieties versus the susceptible variety. So although there is some trend or greater numerically greater yield for the susceptible versus the resistant, but statistically there is no difference. So if you ended up with using susceptible varieties of tomato, for sure, as you saw, even the single application of non-fumigant nematicide may not help. You might consider 2 applications of the non-fumigant, one at the transplant and one maybe 4 weeks, 3 or 4 weeks after transplants to basically help to suppress the nematode. But I would recommend to use the resistant varieties. There are different varieties in the market and they are good in terms of the productivity, in terms of the taste, there is no difference. But if you ended up using with the resistant variety, I would recommend to rotate it with other vegetable crop or even susceptible tomato to basically prevent the resistant breaking due to root knot nematode. All right, so oops, this is dark. Okay. All right, I have this is my last slide basically. I've been called by a few growers who basically use vellum prime as a drench application for root knot nematode control. And they ended up with seeing the burning of the plant or stunting of the plant due to the drench application. So we thought maybe we can do a trial to see what's going on. So in this trial, we had vellum prime basically at the 6.5 fluence that was applied through drip. We also, this one was applied, the first treatment was applied at planting. We also had the same treatment, which was applied again through the drip, but this was applied 3 days after planting. We also had, again, vellum, but for this treatment, we use it as a soil drench at planting. We also include Vided as a positive, as a control, as a standard, and we apply this through drip tape, again, at planting. And also we had the untreated checks. Let's look at the data. You can see here's the data for phytotoxicity. Phytotoxicity, we had a scale of 0 to 10. 0 means there was no phytotoxic damage, and 10 means that there was a huge phytotoxicity, or there was a complete burning of the plant. As you can see, the soil drench application of Vided at plant had the highest phytotoxicity compared to the other treatments. Here is some damage of, I mean, what I mean by phytotoxicity, you can see that the symptom on the foliage, basically on the lower leaves of the plant. You can see the burning on the edge of the plant. You can see these are also the damage caused by vellum prime, especially when early in the growing season. So these, when you have these damage and early in the growing season, these will affect later in the growing season and basically on the yield of the plant. So let's look at the vigor rating. Vigor rating, again, is the growth of the plant. A scale of 1 to 10, 1 means the less growth, 10 means the highest growth. As you can see, again, in the treatment where we had the drench application of vellum prime, we had the lowest, basically, we had the lowest crop yield and crop vigor compared to the other chemical used. In terms of the gall index, although there is all these nematicides did a good job compared to the untreated check. So as a conclusion, if you're planning to apply vellum as a soil drench, probably it's not a good idea. Or if there is no alternative, you might need to consider maybe apply between 3 to 5 days before transplanting, so that the efficacy or the toxic efficacy of nematicide can be reduced, so that you won't get any phytotoxic damage. So this is what I have for today. Again, thank you for your attendance, and let me know if you have any questions.
Okay, if there's no questions, just want to remind everybody real quick that if you want your pesticide credit, you need to sign out of the chat box in the same way that you signed in with your name and your county and your pesticide number. Want to thank everybody for attending. We did record the meeting, and I'll be sending out that recorded link as soon as the meeting's over. Also, want to give you a heads up that we're going to have a watermelon meeting February 8th, and I'll send a link out to that meeting as well, whoever would like to attend that meeting. If you have any questions, just let us know.
Thank you, Ty.
Thank you all.